You ever look around and think, wait, why does building money have to feel like a second job? You're working hard, checking your accounts, trying to stay disciplined, and somehow the whole thing still feels exhausting. And if you stop for 1 minute, it feels like everything might slide backward. Yeah, no thanks. What if I told you wealth doesn't have to cost you your sanity? What if the real flex isn't grinding harder, but building a system so solid your money keeps moving even when you're busy living your life? That's the game. Most people picture financial success as this brutal, miserable marathon where you sacrifice your sleep, your friendships, your weekends, and maybe your soul. But the people who actually build serious wealth without burning out, they don't rely on sheer force of will. They make the process automatic, sustainable, almost boring, honestly. And boring is good when boring makes you rich. I'm Vanessa, and I spend a lot of time thinking about money, personal finance, and why some people build wealth in a way that actually fits their life, while others run themselves into the ground chasing shortcuts. If you're tired of the emotional whiplash, the feast or famine cycle, and the constant pressure to do more, make sure you subscribe. And if this changes how you think about money, hit the like button too. Now let me ask you something. When you hear rich person, what pops into your head? Maybe it's someone on a laptop at 2 a.m. surviving on caffeine and vibes, trying to build a startup from pure obsession. Or maybe it's somebody who got lucky, inherited a ton of money, or hit one big investment and suddenly looked like a genius. And sure, some wealthy people do fit those stories. But the ones who build lasting wealth, without wrecking their lives, usually aren't the loudest or the busiest. They're the ones who figured out how to make wealth building happen in the background. That's the real secret. Not speed, not drama, not constant effort. Systems. Because the goal isn't to become a millionaire as fast as possible and then collapse from exhaustion. The goal is to build something that keeps working without demanding your attention every waking second. And one of the biggest mistakes people make right away, they think wealth building has to come from scarcity. Cut everything, never enjoy anything, treat every dollar like it's sacred, act like one coffee run is going to destroy your future. Look, being careless with money is obviously not the move. But living in nonstop restriction is a great way to burn out and do something impulsive later. People who feel deprived usually don't stay disciplined forever. They snap. Then they overspend. Then they feel guilty. Then they start over. Same loop, different month. That's why the smarter shift is from scarcity to abundance. Instead of asking, how do I save one more dollar? Start asking, how do I make one more dollar? Instead of obsessing over every little expense, focus on building assets that produce income. That changes the whole emotional experience. You stop feeling like you're just depriving yourself and start feeling like you're constructing something real. And no, that does not mean ignore your spending. It means don't pretend cutting lattes is a complete wealth strategy. It isn't. Real wealth comes from having a plan. So let's start with clarity. Because a lot of people say they want to be rich, but if you press them, they have no actual target, no number, no timeline, just vibes. And vibes are not a financial plan. You need a specific goal. What does financial independence actually mean to you? Retire at 50? Have 6 months of expenses saved? Own investments that throw off enough cash flow to cover your life? Buy a few rentals? Maybe just not stress every time your car makes a weird noise? Whatever it is, define it. Then work backward. If you want to retire at 50, how much money would you need? If you want passive income to cover your bills, how much monthly income are we talking? If you want a safety cushion, how big does that cushion need to be? Once you know the numbers, the whole thing gets less emotional and way more actionable. You stop floating around in finance fog and start playing offense. And that brings us to budgeting. I know. Budgeting has the charisma of a toaster, but people misunderstand it completely. A budget is not a punishment. It's a spending plan. It tells your money where to go, so you're not sitting there later wondering where it vanished. And when you do it right, budgeting actually feels freeing. Seriously. When you know how much is going to rent, groceries, transportation, fun, and savings, you stop guessing. You stop second-guessing every purchase. You stop feeling guilty every time you tap your card. That peace of mind? Huge. But here's where people mess it up. They make a budget, track every little thing for a while, and then abandon it because it takes too much effort. And that happens because they're trying to manually outmuscle their own habits. That's a losing game. Willpower is limited. You don't have endless self-control, and honestly, you shouldn't have to rely on it for your entire financial life. You've got work, stress, family, errands, social stuff, random life chaos. You're not going to wake up every day feeling like a budgeting superhero. So instead of depending on motivation, use automation. This is where things get powerful. Imagine your money moving automatically the second your paycheck lands. Savings first. Investing next. Bills handled. Everything routed where it needs to go without you having to make a fresh decision every time. That means no temptation. No, I'll transfer it later. No negotiating with yourself at 11 p.m. after a long day. The system already did the work. And that's the difference between people who talk about building wealth and people who actually do it. Automation removes decision fatigue. It takes the emotional roller coaster out of the process. It turns good intentions into actual results. And the best part, you don't feel deprived. A lot of people hear automate your savings and think that means living like some joyless minimalist monk. Nope. The trick is that you save before you see the money. So you never build your lifestyle around money that was supposed to be invested anyway. You just live on what's left. That's the whole point. You adjust to your real spending power, not your fantasy spending power. Let me make this feel real. Say you make $75,000 a year. After taxes, that might come out to around $2,300 every 2 weeks. Now imagine you automate $400 into savings, $300 into retirement accounts, and $200 into investments every single pay period. Boom! It's gone before your brain can start bargaining with it. What's left is what you actually live on. And here's the surprising part. For a lot of people, that's skill enough to have a normal life. You can still go to dinner sometimes. You can still travel a little. You can still have fun. The difference is that now wealth is happening in the background while your life is still moving forward. Over a year, that adds up fast. You've built a savings cushion and a real investment base without having to constantly try harder. Over 5 years, it gets even more interesting. You've got a meaningful cash buffer plus a serious investment account, and you didn't have to white-knuckle your way through every month. That's what I mean when I say smarter, not harder. But before you get excited about investing, I need to slow you down for one very important thing: your emergency fund. Yes, I know it sounds boring. And yes, I know you'd probably rather jump straight into stocks or crypto and fantasize about big gains. But the emergency fund is what keeps one bad month from blowing up your whole plan. Think about it. If your car breaks down, your fridge dies, or you get hit with an unexpected medical bill, and you have no cash reserve, what happens? You either sell investments at the worst possible time, or you go into debt. And debt, especially high-interest debt, can wreck momentum fast. An emergency fund acts like a pressure valve. It keeps you from making panicked money decisions when life gets messy, which, by the way, life absolutely will. There's research showing that people with at least $2,000 in emergency savings have financial well-being scores that are 21% higher than those with none. That's not a tiny difference. That's a real psychological shift. So start with your first $1,000. Fast. That handles a lot of the little emergencies that show up out of nowhere. Then work toward 3 months of living expenses. That's where things start to feel truly stable. And when you have that buffer, you stop treating every inconvenience like a financial crisis. You stop rating investments. You stop reaching for credit cards every time something annoying happens. You can breathe again. Now we can talk about growing your money. And no, it's probably not going to involve discovering some secret stock no one else knows about. The real engine of long-term wealth is compound interest. Compound interest is simple, but it's insanely powerful. Your money earns returns, then those returns earn returns, and then those new returns start earning too. It snowballs. That's why time matters so much. Picture this. You invest $10,000 at age 25 and never add another dollar. You just let it sit there growing at 7% a year. By age 55, that money is worth almost $77,000. Same money, no extra contributions, just time. Now compare that with someone who waits until 35 to make the same $10,000 investment. By 55, they're looking at about $40,000. That 10-year delay costs them roughly $37,000. That's why people say time is your most valuable asset. Because in investing, it literally is. And this is where a lot of people go off the rails. They think they need to outsmart the market with individual stock picks. They want the hottest thing, the next big thing, the thing everyone's talking about. But over long periods, most active traders do worse than plain old index funds. That's just the truth. A simple, diversified fund that tracks the market and gets held for decades beats a lot of people who are constantly trying to outguess everything. It's not glamorous. It's not dramatic. It won't make for a flashy story at brunch. But it works. And more importantly, it doesn't eat your life. You're not glued to charts. You're not refreshing your portfolio all day. You're not making emotional decisions because some headline scared you. You just keep investing and let time do the heavy lifting. That's the part people underestimate. Wealth doesn't always come from doing more. Sometimes it comes from doing less, but doing it consistently. Now let's get into something wealthy people understand really well. Passive income. This is one of the cleanest ways to build wealth without burning out. Because passive income is money that comes in without you trading your time for it every single day. That doesn't mean effortless forever. It means you do the work up front, and then the asset keeps producing. Dividend stocks are one of the easiest examples. When you own shares in companies that pay dividends, you get a slice of the profits on a regular basis. Quarterly, usually. If you own quality dividend-paying businesses, you can create a stream of income that starts working for you in the background. Say you put $10,000 into dividend stocks with a 3% yield. That's about $300 a year coming in. Not life-changing by itself, sure, but it's a start. And if you reinvest those dividends automatically, you're buying more shares, which generates more dividends, which buys more shares. That's compound growth doing its thing again. It starts small. That's fine. Small is how it starts. Over time, though, it can turn into a meaningful income stream without you needing to constantly manage it. And that's the vibe we want. Not frantic, not dependent on you checking the market every 5 minutes. Just a steady asset working in the background. Real estate can also fit into this picture. Not for everybody, not instantly, and definitely not without effort, but it can be a strong passive income tool if you do it right. A rental property can generate monthly cash flow and appreciate over time. In a simple version of the idea, tenants are essentially helping pay down the mortgage, while the property itself ideally becomes more valuable. Now, yes, there are headaches. Repairs happen. Tenants can be annoying. Things break at the worst possible time. So I'm not saying everyone should rush out and buy a duplex tomorrow like it's a magic wealth machine. But once a property is set up well, and especially if you use a property manager, it can become a much more hands-off income source than a job. The point is not that real estate is easy. The point is that it can produce wealth without demanding your full-time attention every day. Now let's talk about something that quietly protects everything else: diversification. This is one of those ideas that sounds boring until you realize how important it is. Diversification means spreading your money across different asset types instead of betting everything on one thing. Some stocks, some bonds, maybe some real estate, maybe a little something else depending on your situation. Why does that matter? Because if one thing tanks, your whole portfolio doesn't go down with it. And different assets behave differently in different environments. Stocks might struggle, while bonds hold up. Inflation might rise, and commodities might do better. One piece can be weak, while another helps stabilize the overall picture. That makes your wealth-building journey a lot less fragile. The exact mix depends on your age, your risk tolerance, and when you'll need the money. If you're in your 20s, you might lean heavily into stocks because you've got time to recover from market drops. If you're older and closer to using the money, you may want more stability and income-producing assets. There's no universal perfect allocation, but the principle never changes. Don't put everything in one basket. That might sound slower than chasing the hottest stock of the moment, but slow and steady is usually what actually wins. And emotionally, diversification is a lifesaver. You're way less likely to spiral every time one sector drops. Now, let's get into one of the most expensive mistakes people make when they're trying to build wealth while still living a normal life. High interest debt. Credit card debt, in particular, is brutal. Here's the kind of math that should make you sit up straight. If you carry a $5,000 balance at 22% interest and only make minimum payments, you could end up paying nearly $2,800 in interest over 5 years. That is money evaporating. And unlike investing, that interest is not working in your favor. It's actively draining your future. High interest debt is toxic because it's basically a guaranteed loss. You're handing money to the lender every month, and that loss usually costs more than what you reasonably earn by investing. So before you get fancy with your portfolio, get rid of the expensive debt first. One of the best ways to do that is the debt avalanche method. List your debts by interest rate. Pay minimums on everything, then attack the highest interest debt with every extra dollar you can find. That approach saves the most money mathematically, and it gets you out faster. And the psychological payoff? Huge. Because once that debt is gone, the money that used to disappear into interest can finally start building your future instead of funding your past. That shift matters more than people think. It can completely change your energy around money. Then there's taxes. I know, not exactly a party topic, but if you're trying to grow wealth efficiently, taxes matter a lot. The smartest move is usually to prioritize tax-advantaged accounts. A 401k can lower your taxable income while your money grows tax-deferred. An IRA gives you another tax-friendly place to invest, with a contribution limit of $7,000 per year. And an HSA? Honestly, that thing is ridiculous in the best way. You get a tax deduction on contributions. The money grows tax-free, and withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are tax-free too. That's a lot of advantage in one account. And the reason this matters is simple. The less your money gets eaten by taxes each year, the more of it stays in the machine compounding. Over decades, that difference becomes enormous. Two people can invest the same amount, do the same work, and end up with wildly different results just because one used smarter account structures. That's not a small detail. That's the kind of thing that can quietly add up to serious money. Tax loss harvesting can help too, because using investment losses to offset gains can lower what you owe. It's not the flashiest strategy, but again, the theme here is smart systems, not dramatic moves. So if we pull this all together, here's the real answer. Building wealth without burning out is not about being the hardest worker in the room. It's not about sacrificing your entire life. It's not about living miserable and calling it discipline. It's about building a machine. You automate your savings and investments so money moves without constant effort. You set a clear goal so you know what you're aiming at. You build a budget so your money has direction. You create an emergency fund so life doesn't knock you off course. You let compound interest work over time. You use passive income to create cash flow. You diversify so one bad move doesn't wipe you out. You kill high-interest debt so it stops draining you. And you use tax-advantaged accounts so more of what you earn stays invested. That's the whole strategy. Nothing flashy, nothing reckless. Nothing that requires you to choose between financial progress and having a life. The people who do this well usually don't get rich overnight. They just stay in the game long enough for the system to work. And that's the part most people miss. Wealth building is a marathon, not a sprint. If you try to sprint it, you burn out. If you pace yourself, automate what you can, and let your money do part of the work, you give yourself a real shot at financial freedom. And honestly, that's way better than looking rich while feeling miserable. Build the system. Automate the boring stuff. Let your money work. Then go live your life. Your future self is going to be very, very grateful you did it this way.